This morning I'm going to make one of the breakfasts that we really enjoy during the summer months. I'm going to make tomato gravy. I'll tell you a little bit about that just in a minute. First I've got some sausage that Papa brought us that he made, and it's froze. So I've got me a bowl full of warm water there, and I'm just going to set those in there and let them be kind of thawing out. I should have put them in the refrigerator last night before I went to bed, but I didn't do that. So the tomato gravy, I'll talk about it a little bit. I did not grow up eating tomato gravy. I never even heard of it. Never knew anybody that eat it. We had gravy often at Granny's house, but Granny made, think of meat gravies, whether it was sausage, bacon, even fatback gravy, and sometimes she made sawmill gravy, what we called sawmill gravy, which was she made gravy the same way, except she used cornmeal instead of flour in it. We also had chocolate gravy. One of my favorite things for breakfast for sure. But we didn't really, as far as other gravies, now Pap really liked gravy when you think about like making it, if you fried some chicken or maybe fried pork or anything like that, or maybe at Thanksgiving when you wanted to make gravy with the turkey, he really liked that, and sometimes he would do it, but Granny really never did. She never did any of those gravies that I remember. Matt does that sometimes with some kind of, we have pork chops or something, he'll say, let me make a pan of gravy, you know, where I've fried the pork chops. But mostly I'm like Granny, and I typically just make the gravies, the ones that she made when I was growing up. So anyway, like I said, didn't know anything about tomato gravy. But once I started writing for the Blind Pig and the Acorn, people kept telling me about it. You know, did your mama make tomato gravy? I was like, no. And in one way, I couldn't really wrap my mind around what tomato gravy would be like. But on the other hand, I love tomatoes in the summer with breakfast. I love to have a fried egg and biscuits, and you know, whether it's bacon or sausage or whatever, and then a big slice of tomato fresh from the garden. I think it just goes so well together. And I really started enjoying that way back in the day when I met Matt when I was working at Lake Logan out in Haywood County. It was a meeting facility for Champion International at that time. So people come there was lodging, so they would stay, have their meetings, they could fish, they could go on trips to go golfing, there was a driving range, you know, just various little things. They could of course go hiking, things like that. But because there was lodging, there had to be, you know, somewhere for them to eat. So we would get to go over there and get breakfast sometimes. And I think it was one of my cousins that, you know, I noticed she started eating like a tomato in the sun. It was always in the summer when we worked, with her eggs and toast and stuff. And so I started doing that, and I thought, man, that just goes so good together. So ever since then, I love it too. Mostly in the summer though. We really don't even buy tomatoes in the winter, just because they're almost, you know, tasteless if you get them from the grocery store. Now I would buy them if I'm going to make something that needs tomatoes, something like that. But as far as just buying them to eat every week, we don't do that. And if I do buy them, most of the time I buy the little bitty ones, because the ones we call Tommy Toes, because they seem to have more flavor. Anyway, when I kept hearing about tomato gravy, I thought, well, I've got to at least try it. I've got to try it. So I did, and we really liked it. In fact, I liked it so much that I put it in mine and Jim Cassidy's cookbook, Celebrating Southern Appalachian Food. And I'm going to read you the entry here. And if you've not got your cookbook, I'll put the information in the description below so you could go pick one up. But tomato gravy, it's very, very easy to make too. You need 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. You need 2 tablespoons of bacon drippings. Now, if you didn't want to use bacon drippings, if you didn't want to use bacon grease, I suppose you could try butter. You could use, you know, one of the oils if you wanted to, like vegetable oil or something like that, but the bacon really gives it a great flavor if you've got bacon grease. A dash of sugar, 2 cups of peeled and chopped tomatoes, water or milk if you need it. It kind of depends. This is like a lot of gravies. It's after you make it, it's kind of by feel, and so it really depends on how juicy your tomatoes are. You may need to add a little additional liquid, or you may not. And it also depends on how do you like your gravy. Do you like it really thick, like a pudding, or do you like it more thin? I'm of the thin. I like a thin gravy, just like I like the thin broths when you think about soup beans and boiled cabbage and soups and all those kind of things. I really love that broth, but I like it on the thin side. And then salt and pepper to taste. Now you could dress it up and put other things in it if you wanted to, but that's all I do. And as far as the amount, like if you wanted to decrease that, like, you know, if you're familiar with making gravy, you could easily do that. Of course, you could increase the amount. You could double it all and make a huge, big old pot of tomato gravy. So now I'll go ahead and read the directions, even though I'll show you how to do it. And again, it's very, very simple. Add flour to hot bacon drippings and cook over medium heat for 1 to 2 minutes, or until flour is browned while stirring readily or steadily. You have to stir it, to keep it from burning. Season to taste with salt and pepper as the mixture cooks. Stir in tomatoes and a dash of sugar. And that sugar, if you made spaghetti sauce and things like that, often they'll tell you to put just a pinch of sugar or something. It really cuts the acidity of the tomatoes. And if you wanted to leave that out, though, you could sure leave it out. Cover and cook over low heat until mixture thickens. Depending on how juicy the tomatoes are, you may need to add milk or water to thin the gravy to the desired consistency. This recipe is a favorite summer breakfast item in many parts of the Appalachians. And then our tip that we put in the cookbook is canned tomatoes may also be used. A variation is to saute diced onion in the bacon drippings before adding the tomatoes. I've had a lot of people tell me that they do that, but I don't ever do that. I should, though, because it'd probably be really tasty, but I've just never tried it. So now I'm going to chop up my tomatoes. I'm going to get my gravy going, and then the sausage, probably already starting to thaw out. I can feel that. And then I'll do my biscuits, and then I'll have eggs, and I'll be ready to eat. So the tomatoes I'm using from our garden, I've got a Cherokee Purple here that's kind of wonky and got a bad place on the bottom. I don't know, I probably should cut it up first just to use it and get it done. And these others, aren't they beautiful? Aren't those beautiful tomatoes? This is the first year that we've grew these, and we got the seeds from Debbie at Bryson Farm Supply, and didn't really have a name with it. It says it's from the notes that her husband had took about it. Somebody brought in the seeds to them, is how they would accumulate these seeds, and they didn't really ever accumulate enough to sell them. They just had some, like almost like a seed bank, if you think about it. But anyway, it said it's from the early 1900s, and it's been really prolific for us. And you see, almost every tomato was about that big, a big old tomato, good for a tomato sandwich. But really great flavor, different than our favorite Cherokee Purple. It's not as deep and rich and like kind of dusky, I don't know, as the Cherokee Purple, but it's like a brighter tomato flavor, and I don't know, it's different but really equally as good, I think. So I think we'll be growing this one for a long time to come. Now, of course, as far as I've got my Rita little tomato knife, works great, but as far as how you cut it and all that, there's numerous ways to go at it. And you could even get you some boiling water and put the tomato in there, and ooh, it's pretty on the inside, and then peel it that way. But I usually don't do that. I usually just cut it up into quarters and kind of gently peel with this great tomato knife. I could link to one of those in the description too if you don't have one. It works fantastic on tomatoes and peaches and things like that are soft. Matt's Aunt Wanda got us this ages ago. I don't know how I ever lived without it. It just really, really works well. As far as dicing up the tomato, again, there's really no right or wrong way to do it. And you could even leave them whole like that. You just have to kind of chop them up in the pan. But dicing them up really lets them cook up faster, if you will. When I get done, I'll have to pour all my juice in there. I don't want to lose that wonderful juice. Cherokee Purples are so juicy. You just literally, it's just ponding up on the inside. I'm going to have to cut the bad places out of this one. Even with the terribly dry weather, our tomatoes did good. We usually have good luck with tomatoes. It's one thing that we can do well with. We have over the years had to figure out what grows, everywhere you're at, you have your own little climate, sometimes even from your, like I think of here in Wilson Holler where I'm at, mine's probably, I know it is, slightly different than my Uncle Henry's, like the first house coming into the holler, because his is more flat and then probably gets more sunshine, so every little garden area has its own climate. You kind of got to figure out what works good for you, what grows good for you. What grows good for you may not grow good for your neighbor 4 or 5 houses down. And of course, soil and all that has something to do with it too. So I think I'm going to go, I'm almost at 2 cups. Maybe I'll see if I can find me a smaller tomato here. I've got a basket of tomatoes I've got to do something with today, so that's where it's easy for me to go get another one. I got another Cherokee Purple. They smell so good. It's about starving me to death. I'm hungry. Matt's out working on our driveway. We did finally get rain last night. We got a good rain. I don't know how good. I mean, I'm grateful for it, but I wish it had just rained all night. Set in and rained all night. It didn't, but it was a storm, and it was really had a lot of rain with it. So we'll take what we can get for sure. But it did wash the driveway, so he's trying to put it back in shape. Might be a little bit over 2 cups, but that'll be okay. Now let's see if I can, better go over to the sink to try to capture all my juice. Okay, now I'm going to go over to the stove and start the gravy. I'm going to add my 2 tablespoons of bacon grease here. Let it be heating up. A lot of people ask me about leaving my bacon grease on the counter here. It's experts will say don't do that, that you shouldn't do that, you should keep it in the refrigerator. I do leave mine on the counter. That's how, when I was growing up, Granny had, you probably remember those little, I guess she still has it, it's little metal cans that said grease on them or something, with a lid, and she'd just leave it sitting in the middle of their stove. But one of the reasons, I feel comfortable doing it is because Granny did, and then also because, like Granny, we use it often. So if I was just going to leave it here and not use it for 6 months, I wouldn't do that. I'd put it in the refrigerator. But again, you should probably follow the advice of the experts. So we'll let that heat up just a minute more before we add the flour and the seasoning, salt and pepper. Again, you can use whatever you would like to. It's probably heated up enough now for us to add the flour. I'm just going to put, Matt likes a lot of pepper, so I'll probably please him this morning and add a lot. Miss Cindy's salt shakers, I think I shared that with you. We're using her salt and pepper shakers, and my goodness, her salt comes out fast compared to our old one. We've had to learn to be careful. And we're just going to let this cook for about 2 minutes. So you can see it does turn a brown color. I think we're ready to add the tomatoes. I'm just going to add them all at once. Now that I've got it all mixed up there, I'm going to put a lid on it and let it cook. I'll keep an eye on it though while I'm making my biscuits and my other things to make sure that that I don't need to add any other kind of liquid. And if I do add liquid, which I probably will before it's over with, I add milk. I use milk. You could use water though, certainly. You could use more tomato juice. You could get you some more tomato juice and use it. But we'll see if once those little pieces begin to cook up and see how much moisture they let out. It's going to be good. So in the old days when I would do something like this, I would use either a piece of tin foil to cover, because I never really had a lid that fit good, over a certain, like a pan like this. Sometimes I would just sit a bread pan or a cookie sheet on top of it and use that. I'm also going to turn it down just slightly, turn down the heat there. but I would put a bread pan over it and let that be my be my lid. But a few years ago, a wonderful subscriber sent me like an all-purpose, what do you call that? I guess like kind of an all-purpose lid that would fit various different pots, and it really does, work good. So that's what I use now, is this. Now on to the biscuits. I use whipping cream to make my biscuits. This recipe's also in the cookbook, mine and Jim's cookbook. And I have several videos. I can link to some of them down below. It gives more detail about it. Really easy biscuit to whip up and really good. This morning, I usually use just my old wonky cookie sheet, but this morning I'm going to use, I've got my cast iron skillet here, little flat, we call them like a spider pan. I don't know if that's really the correct name for them or not. Anyway, I've got some bacon grease on it, and that's what I'm going to use this morning. I went ahead and put Papa's sausage in a pan, and so it's over there frying up. I checked on the gravy and turned it down a little bit more. It's just about done, and I'm not sure I'll have to add any kind of liquid or not. I'll have to check that out right before I'm ready to serve it. I like the really crunchy edges of biscuits, so I leave a little space between mine, whether I'm putting them on the cookie sheet or if I'm using the cast iron. And I like my biscuits more on the thin side instead of those cat head biscuits you often hear people talking about. But this recipe makes really good cat head biscuits if you wanted to have them big. Okay, the baby biscuit this time is almost as big as the others, but there it is. I'm going to put these in the oven, let them be cooking. I think, check on the sausage and the gravy. Have to do the eggs, get out some jelly. I'm really wanting sorghum syrup this morning, so I'm going to get some of that out, and we'll be ready to eat soon. Let's check on the gravy again. It's looking really good. I don't think I'm going to have to add any milk or water. Those tomatoes were so juicy. So I've turned it down on low, and I'm just going to let it continue to cook while I'm frying the eggs and waiting on the biscuits and the sausage. You know what I forgot though? I just realized I never did put the sugar in, did I? So wouldn't have been, it'd still be good even if we didn't, but I will get a little bit now and put it, just a little. Kind of takes the bite out of the tomatoes slightly, and somehow enhances their flavor too, I think. But of course you could leave it out if you didn't want to put it in, and I almost did that. See how beautiful it turned out. It's gonna be good. You ready to eat, Matt?
Yeah.
I'm going to take Matt the honey and syrup, or syrup for me, over in some butter. Looks like a feast for sure. Need some sausage. Get a biscuit. I crumble my biscuits up. Matt does his the other way. Whew, hot too. And this wonderful gravy over them. I'm going to be sure to take me a biscuit to put my sorghum syrup in too. And I love cantaloupe with breakfast. Again, like the tomatoes goes with breakfast, I think cantaloupes do too. Give me some cantaloupe. There. Give me my extra little biscuit to take with me. Now let me try the tomato gravy. A wonderful fresh tomato taste, along with the bacon grease, really gives it that hint of bacon. Like if you like BLTs, you probably like tomato gravy. The bacon grease really, along with the tomatoes, the smoothness and the acidity of them, really gives it a hearty feel though. Most gravies are like that. They're really like something you feel like would stick to your ribs, they say. This one for sure, just because of that rich bacon flavor. Gotta have it with a little piece of Papa's sausage. Sure got me a napkin. Really delicious. A lot of people have asked me for a Papa's sausage recipe. I don't have it. Maybe someday I could get him to show us how he makes it though. Biscuits have that perfect little crunch. Really fantastic summer breakfast. I hope you enjoyed seeing how to make tomato gravy. If you love it, tell me about it. Tell me how, maybe you've got a variation, maybe you do something different, maybe you add those onions that we mentioned as a tip in the book. I'm going to go over here with Matt, enjoy the rest of our breakfast, and get me some sorghum syrup for my biscuit. I'm always glad when you stop by to help me celebrate Appalachia.